And in terms of scanning outdoors, distance between scans.
Yeah, so I did a test. I took my handheld laser measure with me, and originally I was just picking up the tripod and going 5 steps, putting it down. So I did this test, and I started it. I typically, when I'm outside, I was going every 10 steps. But then I said, let me try to go, 11 steps, 12 steps, 13 steps.
Okay. 57 minutes later, how many steps were you up to between scans?
I think it finally got an alignment error at 43. So I had to go back to 42. So 42 for me was the limit, 42 steps.
42 steps. And then you've actually done a little translation table. So 42 steps of Tom Sparks'
5'9" self equals 115 feet 6 inches.
Say again.
115 feet 6 inches.
115.
Correct.
15 and 6 inches. And that was, tell me number of steps again.
42.
42. So and that's versus maybe every 6 or 8 feet with the Matterport Pro 2 camera. Can't even do that outdoors unless you're a rocket scientist and understand and appreciate how the camera works in order to tease that out. A magic, we'll just, for the purpose of this conversation, say it's nearly impossible to scan outdoors with a Matterport Pro 2 camera unless you are an artist. With the Matterport Pro 3 camera, no issues in terms of scanning outdoors, bright sun.
Yeah, no issues.
And can scan 42 steps.
115 feet. That's I was impressed at 15. I was impressed at 40 feet.
So it almost means, from a practical standpoint, anywhere you want to put the camera outdoors, there's a good chance that the scan's going to connect. And in your 57-minute video, thank you, which was actually awesome. I noticed in 3 days you had 300 people had watched the video. So there's obviously interest in the distance between the tripod. 42 steps, 115 feet 6 inches. That's really awesome. I think, just as a tip, if you're thinking about buying the Matterport Pro 3 camera, the ability to scan outdoors and to have a lot of distance between scans, that you may not necessarily do that in a model, but because you want some walking around experience, but it may be handy to know there's quite a large distance that you could do between scans.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that stood out to me. I don't know if I saw it somewhere on Matterport's marketing, was like, you can scan further apart. You can, but how does that translate into a good user experience for navigating it, walking around?
Well, Tom, you put together this tour of help me out, Mar Island Vallejo, California.
Island Vallejo. Yep.
And I walked around, even where you were close to the 42 steps, and I found it okay. If I really wanted to walk that decommissioned military base, that I could move quickly and cover a lot of ground, and I didn't necessarily need to step every 10 feet. I understand you might, from a business standpoint, might scan it differently if you need to be able to put a scan in front of each storefront, in front of each building as you're doing it. But the fact that you had a lot of distance towards the end of creating that tour, I found that just fine. And
okay.
I think this probably goes back to when you talked about the rotation of the camera speed. You called that, I think, a Ferrari versus a sedan. There's really kind of like, I think there's 3 reasons of speed. One is not just the rotation, but 2 is the distance between scans, because that means you may be doing way less scan points in a tour.
Yeah.
And if you can do a tour in 100 scans rather than 200 scans, that itself, you might say, is half the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did that whole tour real time, as you saw in the video, in about an hour, and it was 140-ish scans or so.
Yeah. And then I think that third thing would relate to scan errors. If you do end up experiencing fewer scanning errors, then that's going to translate to time savings. Though
Yeah.
you haven't actually noticed that just yet.
No.